The fourth sight story recounts 4 tremendously significant episodes relating to the Buddha before he was enlightened, and that were to inform the course of his life. His gut recognition of the inescapable aspects of the human condition, a spiritual crisis or turning point when he sees old age, sickness, death, and a wanderer. The foresights summarize or even crystallize in a very powerful form certain fundamental teachings of Buddhism and cast a great deal of light on the Buddha's own early inner spiritual development. He called them divine messengers who tell human beings something vitally important about their state. The first sight, an old person. Sometimes we see something as though for the first time. In a sense, we've seen it 1,000 times. But one day a moment comes or strikes when we see it as though for the first time. Why is he so faint and frail? How does she get like that? It will happen even to you. One day you will be old. What then is the use of this youth and vitality if it ends like this? Old age it is called, that which has broken him and her down, the murderer of beauty, the ruin of vigour, the birthplace of sorrow, the grave of pleasure, the destroyer of memory, the enemy of the senses, brokenness of teeth, greyness of hair, wrinkling of skin, decline of life, weakness of faculties. I spit on you, old age that makes for ugliness. The bodily image, so charming, is trampled by old age. Even those who have lived 100 are headed all to an end in death, which spares no one, which tramples all. The second sight, a sick and diseased person. All are subject to sickness at various times. As healthy as we are, we will be struck down by sickness at some time. The world sees it, but feels no alarm at all. We don't want to grow old, but we can't help it. We don't want to fall sick, but we can't help it. We don't want to die, but we can't help it. Enduring bodily feelings that are painful, fierce, sharp, racking, repellent, disagreeable, life-threatening. Cleaning up excrement, urine, saliva or vomit. I'm sure to become ill. I cannot avoid illness. Really noticing this, the healthy person's intoxication with health will entirely drop away. The third sight, a dead body. Usually we don't see corpses. We're put in a box and dropped in the ground, or put in this incinerator and burned. We will realize this will happen to us one day. An existential crisis will arise. We can't escape it. Destruction is inevitable for all in the world, be they of low, middle or high status. Death, passing away, dissolution, disappearance, dying, completion of time, dissolution of the aggregates, laying down of the body. Not up in the air, nor in the middle of the sea, nor going into a cleft in the mountains. Nowhere on earth is a spot to be found where you can stay and not succumb to death. What is it all about? All this running around, seeking pleasure, pushing away what you don't want. People flopping around like fish in water that is too shallow. What on earth is it that people spend all their time doing? Life isn't meaningless. It's not the whim of some capricious being. It's no whim, not haphazard. Human experience, according to Buddhism, shows the way things flow together and helps us come to terms with our situation. We can create a new vision of how we understand things and how we can act creatively in relation to it. A life of significance, a life of trying to be awake. In this way, the Buddha was brought up against these existential situations of life and death, and he thought about them very, very deeply. But he saw a fourth sight. He saw a person who seemed to be at peace with his situation. the foresight, a wanderer, a holy person. While there is suffering, there is also love, compassion, and generosity. A life dedicated to easing the suffering of others in the world, where people are trying to ease the sickness and suffering of others. The opportunity for a spiritual life, not just the fear that is sparked by old age, sickness, and death, not to recoil from them. And so the Buddha offers another way of being. We try and live in a different way. We try and live with kindness, always responding creatively, no matter what is thrown at us. Always love and connection. It means that someone is trying to really make something of their life. The Buddha goes on to explain how to train the mind and cultivate happiness and care for others. But the Buddha is only the shower of the way. It is up to the individual to follow that way, to decide whether he or she is going to follow that way or not. This attitude shows tremendous respect for the individual. It shows great confidence in the potential of the individual. It shows an appreciation of the fact that the individual cannot be forced. You must want to change. You must want to develop. All that one can do is show an example, encourage, and, if one can, inspire. As a fletcher straightens an arrow, so the person of understanding makes straight the trembling, unsteady mind, which is difficult to guard and difficult to restrain. A trained mind brings happiness.